So we can start our discussion. Hello. Hello, everyone, participants here, also those who watch us on LMT Straume. Those who are interested in this discussion in English, the talk is being broadcasted in English through EEZ Grants, EEZ Norway, where you can observe it in English. For those participants who are here, we have seen not only monologue from the stage, but also a dialogue, because it's important for us not only to create a climate neutral Riga, climate resistance Riga, but for that's why you will be able to use microphones. If you don't feel confident enough to speak, you can ask us your questions through Slido, #questions. But now, in this discussion, Riga, is Riga climate neutral or climate resistant? We have the following participants. Selina Vansane, Riga City Council MP, Deputy Chair of Housing Environmental Committee, Climate Neutrality Working Group. Otto Ozols, architecture, urbanist, activist of urban environment. Gunteras Ruskals, RCC, City Development, Strategic Management Department Manager. Sandra Bērziņa, advisor of Latvian Municipality Association in environmental issues, and Raimons Kaš, Ministry of Environmental Protection and Regional Development, Executive Director of Climate Change Department. But for this discussion, for the sake of this discussion, we can forget about the titles and let us talk without those titles in order for this discussion to be very humane. And so we together, the decision makers as well as society, could come to terms, understand each other, and make our country, our cities, and our backyards climate neutral, climate resistant. We were actually lacking Latvian Municipality Association representatives when we were talking about prison system. We were talking about the fact that municipalities should get engaged more in not only resocialization, but also in helping people, because people come from certain municipalities, and municipalities have to help people, those who are former inmates and those who have to acclimatize. But we are glad that you are present here in talking about climate neutrality. Topic of today is Riga climate neutral? But we can substitute the name of our capital city with any city, because every municipality has to do a lot and even more in order to make our environment more climate resistant and for us to have less problems. Of course, climate change is the biggest challenge of today. Every day, when looking at news or reading news portals, we again and again hear that there are forest fires somewhere or floods. For example, in the north of Turkey, there are floods. In the south, big forest fires, leading to the following, that the decision makers do have to go forward our goals and fulfill the goals which will make our climate more resistant. Before tackling the issues, we have to have the following. In order for this discussion to be understandable by everybody, to understand terminology very precisely, first I would like to give the floor to Raimonds. In order for Raimonds from the ministry to explain what is climate neutrality and what is climate resistance. We all want to do something, but we maybe misunderstand those notions. So what are those notions and what do they mean and how to get involved into them? I will try not to be scientific or politically correct when explaining those terms, climate neutrality and climate resistant. Those are foreign words that we use more and more in our daily life. But at the same time, we don't understand the meaning of them. Not always when saying those words we understand what we mean by them. I will try to come up with an example. What are the difference between those two terms? If we speak about climate neutrality, that means the following. We need to diminish greenhouse effect gases, and it can be achieved by several means, and the first of them would be fully eliminate or diminish use of fossil fuel such as coal, petrol or gas or diesel, as well as transform our emitting manufacturing sectors, and the third, to modernize our activities which are to blame for emissions. Those are climate neutrality issues where we go towards modernization, efficient use, and elimination of fossil fuel. Of course, there can be cases when you cannot fully eliminate climate neutrality impeding factors, and there we have forests for us to help. So thus we create pluses and minuses, and we come to zero, to neutrality. It would be better to become to go into negative scale, but now we are talking about climate neutrality or zero. The second one, climate resistance, which is a more difficult notion. Sustainability. We have to achieve or implement measures to try to avoid impact of climate changes. And the example can be the following. We can accept, for example, that every year the average temperature will exceed. The city is becoming more heated. If there are no green areas, the temperature in the city is getting even bigger, and people living in the city are impacted. And we can come up with measures. For example, build fountains, build parks, and other solutions that have cooling effect on cities. This is another adaptive measure. And two other remarks, speaking about those notions. Those are two different areas, climate sustainability or resistance and climate neutrality. And also, if we speak about business climate neutrality, we have economic gain, but climate resistance, we diminish expenses, we eliminate losses. And the last comment is the following. Climate resistant issue is very important, speaking about partnerships of all kinds. The more partners there are, the more measures implemented, the more efficient the measure is. And from 2004, in cooperation with the European Economic Zone countries, within Norwegian grant framework projects, we implement projects connected with adoption measures. I have an additional question. So, Ministry of Environmental Protection and Regional Development, this Tuesday you have submitted a report, informative report about sales of emission quotas, meaning that we are ready to sell emission quotas and get some money. What does that mean? That our job at climate neutrality is much better than planned. Maybe we have done everything and we can sell quota and gain financial means for greening projects. Are we better than others, or have we not planned everything fully? I will tell you the following. On Tuesday, we didn't decide anything. That was an informative report submitted that within the framework of the project, we have planned to obtain electromobiles for our inhabitants. And we are working on a project that undergoes public discussions at the moment, and interest from entrepreneurs and society is rather big. Speaking about sales and obtention, looking at historic data of our emissions on our national economy and development, we can get some money from by selling emission quota. Every European country can participate in this auction, and this financial instrument will be accessible until 2030. We have already implemented 4 projects, and at the moment we are working on 2 procurements and competitions. Thus, this instrument is going to become even bigger and more active. In this festival, we can also communicate with the society and talk what the government is deciding, speaking about those issues. So explaining, it's important. But if we look from the perspective of our government, Mr. Kariņš, our Prime Minister, has placed Latvia as ambitious country amongst EU countries in the climate neutrality. Question to you, whether you would do something even more ambitious or do exactly the same as our Prime Minister, or do quite the contrary? I am following with great interest all those things, because I'm not so much informed about all of that. It is difficult to say how I would act if I were Prime Minister. But as far as I understand, Latvia is amongst those ambitious countries, because we have not because we have done a lot, but because initial point was in 90s when emissions were measured for the first time. The difference today is the following: we have a handicap, a certain handicap, because of the this starting point. But I'm talking about all the measures and things that we can done. We still have a lot to do, be it waste management or transportation area, where we can see how friendly our cities are for by riding bicycles or for pedestrians. Especially in Riga, we have to do still a lot in order to be ambitious and understand where we are going. Sandra, if we are looking at all the municipalities, how municipalities are doing with setting goals and to reaching them, of what Otto just said, namely waste management, also making houses more heat efficient, etc., etc. Are we doing okay? I think that municipalities are quite different. There are very different political stances in municipalities. There are different inhabitants with their own needs, what they want and what they don't want. Thus, solutions in municipalities differ from one another. But if Riga has set an aim and formulated politically a goal, and we all hope and believe that Riga will reach the goals set, that doesn't mean that other municipalities don't do anything. But the following thing is existing. The political goals have not been stipulated yet. Municipalities are doing things, but we are shy as a nation and we are not telling what we are doing. For example, we do not tell that in Ainaži there is electric street lighting with solar panels and wind generators. We are not telling the society about that. We are not telling about smart traffic lights. We are not telling the society about heating the houses, the special measures that are an impetus into reaching climate goals. And the inhabitants are maybe thinking that, okay, municipalities are doing nothing. But a very important thing is what is the demand of the inhabitants in a certain place. And municipalities and their politicians are there to take into account needs and necessities of locals. This is one of the aspects which at this multifaceted topic we can mention and which we have to remember. We will tackle the issue of Riga. Riga is an example, a good example. You will probably tell what Riga is doing well, you as an MP from Riga. But I have a question to Raimonds. Raimonds, if we look at the area policy, what is the role of municipalities and what are the possibilities for municipalities to reach those climate-resistant goals? Every target audience, be it municipalities, state institutions, politicians or inhabitants, they have their own role for setting goals and reaching them. Municipalities have a special role because they can do a lot of things. They can elaborate planning documents in their respective territory, plan their activities, as well as implement them. For example, by attracting financial instruments or allocating their own finances and taking into account specific situation, they place the money where it is most effective. For example, coast erosion would never be interesting in Latgale region where there is no sea, or which is not coastal region, similar to other things. So we have to look at the sector and the municipality. What is the most problematic issue in a certain municipality? And solutions are very different, starting with water supply, transport infrastructure, heating, etc. As Sandra mentioned, it depends on the political goals as well as willingness of the municipality and communication. This will probably, for the later discussion, how we inform the society of what we are doing, because that is a big challenge. We are doing a lot, but we are not informing the society about that. Very good. Now the question to Selina as well as Gunter's. Speaking about Riga, you're representing Riga City Council. Initially, what were those arguments for and against for Riga to come up with those ambitious goals to become a climate-neutral, climate-resistant, sustainable city? What were the main challenges and argumentation for and against? Sandra said that Latvians are shy, but this is the place to boast, to praise yourselves. So you gave me the floor, says Sandra. says Selina, speaking about climate neutrality. I liked how Raimons explained what it is. Climate neutrality is not something taken away from reality. It is something that we encounter every day. It's about our life, what air we breathe in, what food we are eating, how we move about. Our lifestyle and habits, it will impact how our children are going to live, which is the biggest motivation to eliminate climate change, namely to be responsible and to leave better world for our children, hoping that someone is going to stay behind us. And if those are our children, we don't want to leave a polluted world to them. Climate changes are occurring. That is a fact. They are faster. They cannot be forecasted. The results are more severe, so we have to react. And Riga is not an isolated island. We are in the middle of the situation, and we are co-responsible for that. Cities do leave impact on the environment because cities account for 80% of emissions, 50% of waste, and cities do have to regulate that. That is our advantage. We, when getting involved in it, we ensure better life quality, better life, as well as healthier Rigan, inhabitant of Riga, to live a happier life. It gives also a social and economic impetus and gain, and which is necessary for us here in Latvia as well as for the rest of the world. That's why I step away from what you asked. Do not think about huge things first and then look through perspective of Greta, but to look at our daily life, what is on our tables and what air we breathe. But speaking about Riga, of course, Rigans, when voting in municipal elections, showed their choice, which is one of the main preconditions. And what we offered, we go towards climate neutrality, and we are trying to implement that. We go and diligently follow what they ask from us. We signed Paris Declaration, meaning that we support world's inclination on keeping the average temperature in the levels of 1.5, so the temperature is not exceeding the limit. People are happy about hot summers, but not everyone can endure that. But if you think about Earth as one body, meaning 1 centigrade or 1.5 centigrade, in this body, we feel whether we have 36.5 or 37.5, which is no longer normal. We are striving for to live in a healthy organism. We were ready to involve into this movement. 101st cities of Europe that will be climate neutral until 2030 in 10 years. I believe that until 2050, we have to be fully climate neutral. The question is how much it's going to cost us. If we start early, it will cost us less. It will be less painful. That's why we start planning it well in advance. And it is very clear to us. We are not leaving it for the last moment. We want to do it as fast as we can. Speaking about arguments against, from political point of view, it's something very not popular. For example, let's have a look at cycling paths in Riga center, or dividing fences in Riga, meaning that society is not always inclined positively towards changes. Actually, no one likes changes at first. That's why we have to inform a lot and explain how those changes in a long run sustainably will give the benefit for the society. Here it is important when we talk about climate change. What will be the price for it now and then, now in the future? But from the political perspective, it means that someone has to set those goals and has to measure what will be the impact. We cannot just think of what will look like in titles of newspaper articles and how we can be even more popular. We have planned so many things, but we have to set priorities. We come up with goals, but Gundars is the one who is trying to set the instruments, how we are going to achieve those goals. It might be easier to set smaller goals, and it is more difficult to come up with ambitious goals, but we have a very good start and impetus. We started working. When we started working on this project, we inventoried CO2 emissions. We saw the areas, sectors which account for bigger emissions, what can be done to eliminate in order for us to understand what to do. As Kelvin has said, what cannot be measured cannot be made better. Gundars, can you add something to what your colleagues said? Selina mentioned everything, but very shortly, I am working with planning, urban planning for a long time, and the quality of spatial or urban planning has to be changed in a rapid way. Before that, we thought about investors, about pleasing everyone, but already in 2014, when coming up with the new strategy, we placed inhabitant of Riga in the center of everything, the quality of life. So those solutions were very connected with climate resistance. Maybe we didn't call them climate resistant or neutral, but we cooperate with other countries. For example, with Oslo, we go to seminars. They are talking only about the climate. So we started understanding that it is so very important. Everyone, even the young people, are talking about climate change priorities, but the power that came, or ambitions, came from new politicians. I don't know whether Mr. Karins is saying that we have big ambitions, but as Selina already said, that this is mandatory until 2050. We want to be the first in the Baltics. So if Vilnius and Tallinn will be climate neutral by 2050, we have to be climate neutral by 2049. And this pressure is coming from politicians, from ambitious young politicians, and we understand we have to do more than planned. What are the negative aspects? I believe I can't say anything against it. All those floods or forest fires are not related only to places where they occur. It is all around us. My authority is Juris Rubenis, and he said, if you want to change the world, change yourself. And many people who asked for change, they vote for new politicians. And now they are kind of against solutions for new mobility because they are not ready to change. They are not ready to do something different. They are saying, do change around me. I'm not going to change. But now let us not step back from our goals. Executive power as well as the power, decisive power. From the point of view of Rigans, it is important to match those goals with the possibilities of inhabitants to change, to adapt, to change their habits. In which areas it is easier for us, where we are opened for change, and in which areas, or one area, it is very difficult for us mentally to change, to accept the change, the perception, let alone action. Let us start with the following. We are not striving for or thinking of returning back to Stone Age. We want to live in a modern world, a good life. It is sometimes lost in translation by using and our resources better. We don't have to step back. We don't have to do away with things. We can learn from our own experience, from our movements like Green Freedom, or, for example, warming buildings. There are rational arguments, for example, that your bill is going to be smaller, you will have warmer, but when the house is being rebuilt and when you really have less on your bill and your neighbors are envious, then people do want or are happy about it. We are not sometimes rational. We have only the emotional factor. If sometimes appeal on children or future generations, someone might say, I don't have children. So motivation is very important. Also, studies show what Rigans are ready to do. They are ready to sort waste, maybe to lower a temperature by 1 degree, but they are not ready, for example, to cooperate with neighbors. And I am coming today from a business trip about electric communities between neighbors. For them, it is normal to establish cooperations using renewable energy, and where neighbors are owners of energy company or heating system, and they are co-responsible. So maybe we can share. For example, a car. We can share a grass mower. We don't have to acquire our own. This community economy is one of the key issues, but I believe that the society of Latvia is not ready to step away from indicators of certain wealth. But that is changing. That is changing with generations. But there is a trend already to see it for the better. For example, for young people, they can buy things secondhand. It is even in vogue. It is perceived as something fashionable, but for older people, they have this post-Soviet thinking. If I have a bigger house or a bigger car, that indicates my wealth. But that changes. And maybe the philosophy of community will also be a reality one day. Sandra, how about other municipalities? Maybe other examples, maybe other cities where something is achieved easier, or maybe some things that are stagnating where for some reason you have to do a lot. I agree to Selina about sharing, because historically we are people of single farmsteads, and for us it is something unnatural. This is mine. I'm not going to share. I'm not going to give it to my neighbor. But here again, I have to say, how many municipalities, as many solutions. In some places things are better, in some worse. And today I walked here around Cesis, and I saw that, yes, maybe Cesis people will correct me. There are boxes with vegetables. People are sharing something similar to what we have in Riga, in the old sports stadium. So community gardening, those things are going forward. Also waste management, waste sorting is also becoming a reality. But again, I have to mention an example for people. They are sorting waste, but sometimes sometimes not always that is a motivating factor, because we are creatures of habit, and it is important to establish new habits for people. And I talk to my colleagues and I ask them, what motivates you? The same old children. And my colleagues are saying, my children are coming from school and they heard one or other thing what you have to do, and they are looking at me and saying, Mama, you didn't fold the milk cart before throwing it into the waste. And they reproach me 3 times until I really start folding it by myself. Yes, a young generation is ready to act, and Selina said that we have to motivate young generation. Looking at Otto experience and activity, I think that he is the most motivated Rigan. You have also expressed the following, that your wish to make auto-centric Riga greener. How are you doing with it? Can you find similar thinkers? And do you have other people thinking like you? And do you have any helpers in the bigger shelves of the government? And have you achieved results? Yes, thank you. I have many supporters, many colleagues in our association with ideas and implementation. How to say it better? Tell it openly. I will tell it openly. Unfortunately, it's not good. Unfortunately, it is not good. Maybe you can tell an example what is not good, so we will all understand what we have to correct. Good slogans about mobility and climate neutrality and sustainability. It looks good on paper, but there are problems with implementation, because there is one department describing it, and when implementing, no one is involved. A beautiful story about Chaka Street, which was an experiment, but this experiment never happened because this story and project was not competently managed, not from defining point of defining aims or communicating it to the society. It was strange that we asked Danish architects who offered solutions, for example, to keep cycling lane, to come up with smart traffic lights, etc., etc. But on a political level, the reality became quite, not the contrary, but quite different. Also, the execution of the project lacked competency. For example, how to create a sustainable collection of rainwater. And it has not been elaborated in the project because some other department is responsible for that. Also about cycling infrastructure, there is not a clever plan of unified cycling network, how one project, following project, will supplement today's project. Let's have a look at Vilnius. They are going forward. And when we are speaking about for example, pedestrians. We cannot come up with four-way crossing. If we cannot come up with a four-way crossing on a pedestrian street, then what can we achieve? Lack of understanding between departments. Selina, you together with Gunters, maybe you can comment why implementation is kind of lagging behind, why support is lacking. I believe that Otto is right in the following. The biggest challenge is not the challenges themselves, but the capacity and the competency to implement. We have to attract people, smart people to the departments who can materialize those changes. Also, we have a big staff rotation because the workload is big and everyone has to work with challenges, and you have to be strong when standing for your own for your goals. I have given the signals to the new head of our municipality that we have to invest in competencies and specialists, but there is a certain community. Our MPs do have a so-called two speeds. They want to demonstrate already now that they are ready to invest changes. That's why they are good projects, but they are part of a bigger project. For example, we are working at a low emission zone, which is going to be the biggest challenge that the Rigans will feel in the nearest 7 years. If it were in the right order, then Chaka Street project would be a bigger success because it would be a part of a bigger project. Now it just shows a big courage that we can go for changes. In order to prepare for low emission zone, we will have to work very much. For example, using COVID recovery money to implement or to introduce metro, bus, and other means of transportation. That is going to be just one part, and this money is not going to be enough. For example, in Riga traffic department, there is no department dealing with directly dealing with cyclists and pedestrians. There is a traffic department, but no one is directly responsible for that. Recently, I were visiting Helsinki municipality, and I was working with the head of the department for pedestrians, and he's telling me we are very worried about Riga. Why? Because in one of the projects, Handshake, Riga is not participating. Is skipping all the meetings. No one is responsible. They are in the project, but no one is working. So that will be difficult to reach any goals. On Monday, I will be in Helsinki, talk to them. I will find out the truth. It is a pity that we do not have Olaf Spulks and Skirsis, which is a vice mayor, who is responsible for infrastructure issues, and I think those things will be dealt with. Many things that Otto talked about, I can visualize them, but many people from a side, they lose overall picture. So they all lose overall picture of what we inherited, the previous system, so how Riga looked like before. So we have to tidy things in priority order. We are trying each and every one of us to do maximum in our responsibility respective zones, but we have our own priorities. Also, lack of educated staff overall is because of low salaries, relatively low salaries that are dictated by Cabinet of Minister rules. That has to be evaluated. Politicians are asked for being responsible for taking care of the city, but at the same time, they are not given the opportunity to receive adequate salaries. So we have to evaluate many things, or re-evaluate. There are many people in Riga City Council who are doing their job to the maximum extent. We do see those people, and we have results also. Young people who were previously even not listened to. Now, not everything is as black as we paint. So maybe also in the traffic department, for a long time, there was no systemic work, and now we cannot make everything in order very quickly. And we learn from mistakes, and only we can develop by doing. Criticism taken, we know that. We are trying to do as much as we can. Looking at public government, at you from public governance perspective, you have to understand that competency pay is for a certain price. And if you want to do better and change, not as before, then we have to attract new specialists, maybe those who studied abroad or who got experience somewhere else, somewhere where this experience is much better. And we can take over this experience, and it can be implemented in our territories. This is the co-working, and we, the municipalities, have to understand that competency comes at a price. And I am glad that, summarizing this part, that these issues which are becoming more and more topical about climate resistance and climate neutrality are being stimulated and fostered from and by our children. Young people are coming home and from school and educating their parents, because those parents, some of them, they even didn't know how to do things differently. This is also true about modern technologies. Our children are the ones educating us how to use modern technologies. But if we go even further and look at Riga from another perspective, Selina and Gundars, how do you see the role of green infrastructure for Riga going for climate neutrality and climate resistance? Climate resistance will flourish in green infrastructure, on green infrastructure. We have several projects. Already in 2012, we have created a plan, Riga against flood. Actually, Rigans have to be worried. Many of us think that floods are happening somewhere else. We are 10 meters below sea level, so we are threatened, and our future generations are threatened by that. We know, it's clear to us where to build anti-flood infrastructure. In this planning period, we have a project in Bolderaja where we are going to build a dam, also a cycling path, also entrepreneurship project in Skanste region where we are creating aquatoriums for collecting rainwater. Not that everything goes into common system, but we will have ponds or aquatoriums, which will also benefit the image and the infrastructure, the outlook. everything that is connected with greening, also that we are doing within the framework of the experiment, also planting of trees, etc., etc. We do see that this green infrastructure in the future is going to be horizontal, not special projects that are going to be implemented. If we are renovating, let's say, Gertrude Street, then collection of rainwater system has to be foreseen without saying. Or for private companies, it should always also be mandatory. For example, a private company is building a parking lot. They have to create also collection of rainwater. Alpha, our shopping mall, created new parking lots. Their rainwater is collected in overall system, but they planted a lot of trees, benefiting the greenery and cooling effect of the surrounding area. So we have to invest in green solutions. Selina, infrastructure goes hand in hand with the main issue, main thing in our climate change of habit, similar to ecology. If we have corresponding soil, then you can plant the crops. If there is an infrastructure, if there is a bench and there's a tree, the people will sit on the bench because there's a shade. So that is a good example. If we create safe cycling infrastructure, then the cyclists will appear, not the other way around. Not when the cyclists will appear, then we will build a cycling path. But looking at green infrastructure, green zones and trees, how much one tree gives to the city, diminishing heat, diminishing dust, also noise pollution, even small green patch in the city is like a sponge, sucking in all the moist during the rain time, and the streets are not flooded even for a short period of time. Also, it is pleasant for the eye. Everyone likes the green cities, but all kinds of infrastructure are there. Every day I deal with energy infrastructure and all the investments, huge investments that will allow us to eliminate fossil fuel and maybe other energies that are actually not so green as they appear. And I do like the political power in my group are going towards real climate neutrality, even if it asks for huge investments and are unpopular. But speaking about energy efficiency of buildings, of houses, that is necessary, very, very much necessary, but it is now on the shoulders of Rigans. We have elaborated program for support of energy efficient buildings. We have consultations how to apply, how to create an association for the inhabitants. Maybe you can tell how people can do that. Riga Energy Agency, Riga.lv, there is information on consultation, and on the 9th of September we will meet on Nīcgales Street 4. There, one of the huge apartment building, biggest apartment building, which needs warming. And there we will give a consultation for the inhabitants. The more inhabitants there are in one building, the more difficult is for them to gather, because Latvians and Russians living in Riga are not so keen on meeting each other, even in the staircase, let alone gather 50% or 51% of all the inhabitants of one building. So we have information how to gather signatures, also how to gather and vote for specific measures for warming a house. Another support program is being elaborated. We prepare for it, not only with information campaign, but also financially. And it is important to look at your flat as an investment, as your own property, because the property is decreasing, and when the property is going to be run down, it will be worth nothing. That's why you have to invest well on time, and your property will gain value. So you will have all information about support programs. Also, we are commenting amendments of the Cabinet of Ministers about new rules and regulations, how to apply, and I believe we will be able to get that money. We also attract additional financial means when European money is going to be to cease. Then we will have another solution how to solve these issues. A lot of work to be done in this one sector, but it is very important for the inhabitants and for their well-being. Sandra and Otto, you had something to add. Private investors, private developers that can be involved, and it cannot go on voluntary basis. But for example, if we speak about, let's say, collection of rainwater, then, for example, a municipality can come up with regulations how to develop new projects. For example, Vilnius has a very good example. Without any funding, they have acquired 6 kilometers of cycling path. So when IKEA built their new shopping mall, the city defined their regulations, and IKEA had to build collection of rainwater as well as those cycling paths. And also in cooperation, private and state sector, the result can be much more ambitious and much better. And now, finishing this first part, speaking about Riga, at the end I would like to ask a question to Sandra. You are working with many municipalities, and you know how they are doing. Why Riga has become the most ambitious out of all other municipalities? Maybe some other municipalities are even greener, and for them it would be much easier to achieve those goals. Why Riga? Many municipalities that are smaller are greener. It would have been easier for them to achieve those goals. Why Riga? Riga itself can answer to that, but I can only guess. But I believe it's just inevitable. Riga is our capital city. Riga is the biggest city in Latvia. Riga is also our biggest consumer, super consumer. Riga is the biggest emitter, and Riga has to be the first one to do the most in order to diminish the emissions. Also, Riga has the political wish. Politicians want that. That is their goal. That is good. That is another factor. Third issue is the following. Riga inhabitants are very active. Riga has associations of neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods are approaching municipality, city council saying, we want this or that. Also, Riga has better capacity if we compare with smaller municipalities. Those factors taking all together allows Riga to be ambitious. And Riga, as the capital city of Latvia, does have bigger financial allocations than other ones. And Selina was very correct when she very shyly mentioned that all those activities ask for big investments. And at the moment, those investments are divided in several areas, and it is not easily understood or even acquired. The allocations are varies. There are several ministries: Ministry of Transportation, Environment, Finances and Traffic, and we have to look very much in which measures we have to invest. Where to invest, where the biggest feedback output will be in order to reach our goal as fast as possible. So those were my guesses why Riga, but Riga can answer to that. Selina, I think I already answered. It is the wish of Rigans. This is what they voted for when electing new municipality leaders, and we do feel support from Rigans in these necessities. If we look at the necessities, again, energy efficiency, we have at least 6,000 block buildings that have to be warmed. This is a huge need. If we look at the previous 7 years, we cannot even compare. The indicators are, or financial allocations are so small. Until 2023, 112 buildings are planned to heat additionally. And if we look at what we need thousands of buildings, and we need to renovate them quickly and as quickly as possible to reach those energy and climate neutrality goals. And without ambitions, it cannot be achieved. If we look at our development program and goals, the goals are ambitious, but what today is ambitious, maybe in 5 years it will no longer be ambitious because everything is fastly going forward. National energy plans, energy efficiency plans are so ambitious that Riga's plans are no longer looking ambitious. So if we look at the needs, we have to do a lot and even more and quicker. If we look from another perspective, we can always compare ourselves with less favored, and we can look for excuses. We can look for priorities if talking about budget. Every budget allocation goes through a magnifying glass, this or that, new renovation of a house or a kindergarten. So we cannot do it all, and we have to think of good projects where we can attract investors, how to maximize what we have, how to do it even more efficiently. So we have to remember about eco-farming, Riga, and compare them. This is a bridge towards the next part of our negotiations, but you, the people present, can raise your hand if you have a question. But if you are shy, use a Slido system, and the keyword after hashtag is jautājumi or questions. Do send in the questions. We will ask them to our participants. The question connected with the next part of our discussion. We finished about Riga, about policy planning. Now, the most important, people. or the role of inhabitants, involvement of inhabitants to receive the climate goals. What are Raimond's, what are the possibilities of the inhabitants to achieve the climate goals on the municipal level? In the previous part, we also talked about the involvement, about change of habit, information of society. And the time is our ally and also our enemy. I am trying to remember, I am involved into these energy questions, climate neutral questions 20 years ago. And my activity started with attending seminars in Latvia and outside, where we heard that something has to be changed when bicycles have to be used, but that was not reality in Latvia. Nothing changed, even after listening to that. Maybe you know how many heated houses there were 20 years ago. I think it was around 0, maybe a couple of houses or tens of houses. I remember well because when using also foreign experience and transfer of knowledge, we used foreign experts who gave specialists of municipalities best practices, why it is necessary to warm houses, and what are the effects, and why I am sad even now that, again, those 20 years have passed, but the number of warmed houses is not sufficient. This is the measure that lasts back 20, even 30 years. What I like, innovative ideas in municipalities, how to change how to change solutions. For example, experiment of a cycling path in Riga is a good stimulus for a change of habit. The experiment can be good or successful. It can also have some negative impact, but the results can be measured later on. And I will not be a pessimist, and I might say that we will return to this issue in the nearest future, to the overall idea. If one idea is being considered not good, I believe that we will modify the idea and return to it. Change of habit through making the infrastructure better, or seeing practical examples being implemented and being beneficial for people will result in a change of habit of the society. Because just information of the society does not give full effect. There has to be practical application. And if people, for example, will be able to use electromobiles, and there will be good feedback, that will work, and that will make people's habits to change. We have to give the impetus with the municipalities. Speaking about Chaka Street, where you mentioned that the result had to be measured, the data had to be analyzed. But the problem is the following. We even didn't gather the data. The cyclists and the pedestrians were not gathered. We have not counted people using cycling lanes, how noise pollution has changed. We had to have data, but we never counted them. So this experiment or project, which didn't take place as an experiment because we didn't have the data before and after, the resonance or the feedback was negative, but we cannot base our discussion on data. Also, many people live around Riga, in the suburbs of Riga, and there's a question, is there a synergy planned with suburbs of Riga or with Salaspils, Sādaži, and others in reaching climate neutrality goals. For example, I talked with Mārupe today, and Mārupe is the first municipality who has implemented energy community project, meaning that the house or two houses have placed solar panels on the roofs and using that for self-use. And today we learned a new experience together. We think more and more how to make this cooperation better. And Riga planning region is playing its role, uniting us in this project for exchanging experience in the area of energy efficiency. And one thing that when in Riga, we think about suburbs of Riga. We think that they live around Riga and they come to Riga to work and use our infrastructure. But very often it's the other way around. And I understood from Mārupe people that many people live in Riga and go to work to Mārupe. So the truth is somewhere in the middle. Speaking about experience, we will make it even better. We established Riga and Riga suburbs metropolis as a platform for cooperation for reaching common goals. Before another question, within the framework of a recovery mechanism, we have also a common network of cycling path with the suburbs of Riga, where we will make it in the mutual network. And Raimonds will be able to get involved. He, as a non-Rigan, he will be able to participate. We have another question. A question, yes, from the audience. A question? For all of us inhabitants of Latvia, it is important for Riga to succeed, because irrespective of whatever we say, Riga is the most efficient formation. We have Paris-size inhabitants, we have Paris-size streets. We are sometimes called small Paris. Also, we have little time, but how to achieve our goals, we have to do it interactively. And we have to cooperate, but the changes have to be very concise. We have to implement pilot projects. Best projects are pilot projects because we can show the effect immediately. If they are working well, we can implement a larger scale projects. It doesn't mean that we have to look at one street or one house. But if one project is successful, then a pilot project is successful, then it can serve as proof for other projects. And this is a complex issue and very important issue. And for us, the rest of the inhabitants of Latvia, it is important for Riga to succeed. As Otto is saying, Chaka Street is not being monitored, but nevertheless, there are other questions returning to Riga. Do you believe in climate neutral Riga, taking into account that people living in Riga do not grow their own food, and consumption goods they are also not producing by themselves? Yes, indeed, we believe in what we do. The more we believe, the better we are in succeeding. I personally do believe in climate neutral Riga sooner or later, better sooner, but better later than never. But speaking about growing our own food, people are already using direct purchase possibilities. People are very active. Also, people are growing their own community gardens. Sometimes in the countryside, I see people growing their or bringing their harvest to Riga, eco markets, etc. Also, the supply chain should be as short as possible. But speaking about manufacturing, what is not dependent on Riga itself, but with good example, we should also persuade people that it can always be done better, it can always be regulated, or the market will regulate itself. I myself am the one who is writing letters to ministries, coming up with my suggestions, namely on national level we have to have ambitions, that Riga is not going to solve it all by herself. For example, value-added tax is higher for fuel, but energy efficiency has full VAT, which is going to have a new full coverage of VAT. From the philosophy of environment, it is kind of wrong. It is kind of wrong because those expenditures cannot be allocated to VAT. Riga can show the best example. Riga can impact a lot. It is a living organism. The flows are being coordinated. We have to coordinate also not to create bottlenecks. It can be regulated. Also, if we are speaking about supply and circle economy. Raimonds, one more homework to do. Speaking about VAT, it is a question to the Ministry of Economy, also to representative of the ministry. Raimonds, the tax issue is always very painful issue. Of course, we are talking about greening of tax, which covers a lot of other taxes as well. There are issues connected with CO2 tax. That is the competency of our ministry. For example, machinery, green machinery. But we have to think about greening of our taxes as well. Similar to other issues, we want it or not, but that's the issue of when. The sooner the better. Thank you very much. One more question from Slido. Percentage-wise, by how much Riga apartments have been warmed? Why results are better in Lithuania? Lithuania is more successful. They have state support, state program. They call it Jasper. They had a deal with Reconstruction Fund, European Reconstruction Fund. They started quicker. Also, technical support was much faster for them. We are in the stage where they were 3 years ago. It's not that much for lagging behind, but we can learn from their mistakes and we can go forward quicker. Percentage-wise, or ratio is rather small. And the level that we are trying to achieve and we are planning in the new climate neutrality plan, where we have an adaptation strategy enclosed for 2030, and there we are very ambitious, and we already implement this ambitious plan already now. In energy efficiency area, we have a new support program which is being created, and very soon we will inform inform society about that, about new possibilities. Riga Namu Pārvaldnieks, on the other side of their leaflets, you will be able to learn about possibilities to make your apartments and apartment blocks warm. We have very good tools, but you can also join Nīcgale street meeting on the 9th of September. We will have all involved people as well as experts who will give consultations. Now we provide them remotely. You can find information in the webpage of Riga City. This is our aim. But primary, our goal is in everyone's interests. It is to manage our own property. Even if we are the owners of just the apartment, not the whole building, it is not a problem of our neighbors. The manager of the house is managing also our property, because the stairway, also the roof and the fundament is also our property. We want the value of our apartment to grow, not to be lowered. We want nice houses. This is really from my experience. We had those problems. We were talking with our neighbors about warming the house, but unfortunately from our neighbors we hear that let the manager take care of that. Those are his or her problems. We are still in the level where we are trying to educate people that those are our problems, our house, not someone else's houses. Let's ask our own housing managers to answer to questions, and we can control the execution of their work. We can see the results. This is in our best interests. Now let us quickly touch upon the role of people, of their initiative, how the neighborhood coordinator initiatives were created. Are they important? Whether it is important for people to get involved, how those initiatives are being developed, and whether those initiatives bear fruit. Are they being heard by decision makers? Already from 2009, we created those community associations. At the beginning, that was meant for monitoring municipality activities, but now it is more for strengthening the community. But because communities know each other, be it like CESIS, and bigger responsibilities there, responsibility for the place, environment around you. And at the moment, new city council went even further, and they reoriented, namely, or reorganized it in 5 community centers with coordinators. In the future, there will be 10 or 15 such community groups. So people are changing their habits. You can work with community, you can work with energy community or other types of communities, or we can talk about other issues of circular economy in those communities. This is a good instrument. Selina, maybe you have experience working with these communities. You are maybe working, because I don't know. I actually don't know, but I have been the leader and founder of Take a Community. Take a Community. Now I'm not so much involved in that, but that has been the area where I tried my strength in. This local patriotism is a decisive factor, because the more we feel a sense of belonging to the place, to the country, the more we take care of it, and the more we think of what we are going to leave to our children. And when my first child was born, I was writing letters to Riga City Council because there was no children's playground. And I gathered also young mothers. So maybe these communities we created because Riga City Council didn't take care of us. So we fought for ourselves, and only together we could achieve our goals. And also we applied for financial support for the community. Riga Mayor is at the moment making a round around these communities, answering questions. We also give support for strengthening capacity of those communities. Co-financing budgeting is a unique experience. I told Germans about that, and they told me, oh, we can learn from you about this co-financing budget. They said we are very progressive about that. We try to support initiatives of inhabitants as much as we can. There are some places where projects are stagnating, projects are good, but we allow inhabitants to come up with their own ideas, whether they are important. And not always we can implement them straight away in the way that they have been planned, maybe due to some technical obstacles or financial obstacles or some other misunderstandings that people are not aware of initially, but a lot of things are happening within the projects and within the communities. Every community counts and every person counts, but only in united we stand. Sandra, in other cities, are people also uniting in communities? Are they talking about those issues? Yes, they are. Most definitely. For example, Valmiera. Let's take an example. For example, about salting, using salt on the street during cold period, during ice. But Valmiera people are very active about that, and this is connected with climate change. There are initiatives in Liepāja, in Ventspils, in Smiltene, in Valmiera. There is even a special cooperation council how to communicate and how to cooperate with inhabitants. So there are municipalities doing very well, but it can always made better, and we have to set even higher goals. This is a very good and enlightening summary for the summary of it all. And summarizing our today's talk is the following. If there is a wish of the inhabitants of the city and they are heard from their municipalities and the cooperation is established, then when one side wants, the others listen and enable the first ones, then together we can achieve a lot, even the climate neutrality goals. But today's discussion we can finish. Thank you very much, all the viewers, and I would like you to applaud to our participants. Thank you for taking part in our discussion. Raimons Kašs, Otto Ozols, Sandra Bērziņa, Selīna Vancāne, as well as Guntars Ruskuls. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And tomorrow, in the same place, the discussions will be ongoing here in Cēsis. Do take part in them. Do participate. Do ask your questions. Thank you very much and good night.